Well, good morning. It's a very especially nice morning this morning because the sun came up.
Huh.
And this is, without, without question, the darkest time of the year. This is the new moon, so there wasn't even a sliver of moon to light the darkness, to reflect the sun's light back to us. So I wanted to talk about darkness today. I want to begin with a quote from a Rumi poem called Search the Darkness. Sit with your friends. Don't go back to sleep. Don't sink like a fish to the bottom of the sea. Life's water flows from darkness. Search the darkness. Don't run from it. Night travelers are full of light, and you are too. Don't leave this companionship. Be a wakeful candle in a golden dish. Don't slip into the dirt like quicksilver. I'm going to read it again. Search the darkness. Sit with your friends. Don't go back to sleep. Don't sink like a fish to the bottom of the sea. Life's water flows from darkness. Search the darkness. Don't run from it. Night travelers are full of light, and you are too. Don't leave this companionship. Be a wakeful candle in a golden dish. Don't slip into the dirt like quicksilver. So there are two things that, drew me to this. Uh, First of all, what a great line. Sit with your friends, don't go back to sleep. Is that perfect for us? You know, right? Sit with your friends. That's what we're doing. Well done. Well done. And then again, it says, um, we are full of light. Night travelers are full of light. Don't leave this companionship. We probably have all at some point heard the story of Ananda, the Buddha's cousin, going to him and saying, you know, I think that being with each other, this community, is half of the practice. And the Buddha says, Ananda, it's the whole practice. What was the Buddha referring to? And what is Rumi referring to when Rumi says, don't leave this companionship? When you go and spend a lovely evening with a group of friends who have no practice, the conversation flows around certain topics, certain emotions, certain experiences. Um, and often there's something missing. And what's missing is mindfulness, awareness, clarity that the stories we're telling each other are made up. That we create these stories, we fabricate these mental constructs out of, the various experiences that come through our senses, out of the interpretations of our perceptual system, and that's fun. That's fine. That's just wonderful. It's amazing we can do this. But if you're unable to distinguish the fact that you made that up, that all stories that we tell each other throughout human history and across the world are creations. They're stories. They're made up. It's not a bad thing. In fact, it's a wonderful thing. But not knowing that you made them up, not knowing, the Buddha's phrase is, as it is actually present. As it is actually present. Knowing the process of taking in from the world and from our bodies and hearts and minds and creating, fabricating. It's a joyous experience, but when you think your fabrication is real, rather than, a flowing, creative process that rises out of the darkness. And what's the darkness? The darkness is, not knowing. So there's a sutta, conveniently, on darkness. And I'm not going to read the whole sutta, but I'll read a little piece. And it begins like this. There is, monks, an intercosmic void. How's that for a beginning? There is, monks, an intercosmic void, an unrestrained darkness, a pitch black darkness, where even the light of the sun and the moon, so mighty, so powerful, don't reach. When this was said, one of the monks said to the Blessed One, "What a great darkness! What a really great darkness! Is there any darkness greater or more frightening than that?" There is, monk, the Buddha said, there is a darkness greater and more frightening than that. And what is that darkness? Reveling in fabrications, the Buddha says. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to leave it at that. The Buddha says that the greatest darkness is being seduced, entranced by your own fabrications. And again, let's not use fabrications as a negative. Fabrications is how, I'm sitting here in the middle of the winter and there's heat. I'm delighted by fabrications. Fabrications is how I can look at each of you and have a sense of, what I know about you and my sense of connection with you and a flow of feeling between us. This is pretty incredible. I'm pretty delighted by fabrications. And I know they're fabrications. I know that that's how living beings know the world. Rabbits know the world like this. Fish know the world like this. Juniper trees know the world like this. Mycelium know the world like this. It's not just us. We fabricate out of the sensory experience that occurs, our interactions with whatever the world is presenting at the moment. We fabricate an understanding, an explanation. We fabricate a sense of where we are placed in the field of consciousness, in the field of experience. We fabricate this. Wow. What a lucky thing to be alive, to be able to do that. And then the Buddha says, those who do not know as it actually is present, that these fabrications are created, live in a darkness deeper than the interstellar darkness of the universe. All of our decisions, all of our choices, whether we go here or go there, are based on fabrications. How can we make good choices if we aren't aware that the story about what I want or the story about what I don't want, the story about going here or going there, is one we're creating, we're fabricating? So then the question arises, what should we do? So great, you've developed enough mindfulness and enough understanding of the way things actually are that you see the fabrication as it's unfolding. Okay, great. So I can see that there's a fabrication, there's a story and a creation about what to do about something. But I still have to make a choice about what to do about something. How do I make that choice? How do I make that choice if it's all a fabrication? Night travelers are full of light, and you are too, says Rumi. The darkness has been dispelled because you're aware that this is a story, and given that it's a story, the story shouldn't be the one making the decision about what to do. Let me bring this situation into the light. And if the situation is significant enough, let me sit with my friends. Let me go with the companionship of the wise, my peers who are practicing, who are also focusing on being awake, on seeing things as they truly are. And we can discuss this situation. And that will also bring me clarity about how to make a decision. And here's the key: that is wholesome, that is ethical, This is how we know which stories to act on and in what way. We need to know if acting in a particular way is kind. We need to know if acting in a particular way causes no harm. If we have a story that's causing harm, it may just be causing harm to yourself as the story plays in your mind and your body takes the heat from it all. Feeling, more and more uncomfortable or tense as the story continues. Mindfully knowing this is a fabrication. I can stop. I can stop making my body hurt. I can choose this. This is the bringing of the light to the darkness. Knowing that you have agency. Knowing that this entire practice is based on that. The Buddha said at one point, I would not be teaching this if I did not know that you could do this. I know you can do this. This is very hard, what I'm asking. First of all, to be able to pay attention to your own thoughts is a pretty difficult task. And then to be able to pay attention to your own thoughts with the recognition that they're fabrications rather than anything solid. That's a big ask. And then to be able to pay attention to your body and your heart, to see what the impact of these thoughts are. And then to choose. These thoughts are wholesome. They make my body feel light. They allow me to be vulnerable and connected to life, to my friends, to my communities. These are good thoughts. They're kind, and they cause no harm. And you smile. Or you notice, these thoughts are causing my body to feel tense and heavy. These thoughts are creating a sense of a need for protection and closing off connection with life and with my friends and my communities. These thoughts are unwholesome. This is not a choice I wish to make. I don't want to cause harm to myself or to others. It's unkind to sit here getting tenser and tenser and more elaborating the various means of protecting my tender heart. Remind yourself that you're full of light, that you bring light to the darkness. Remind yourself, most crucially, that this story that is making your body so heavy and defended is just a fabrication. You're just creating it as you go. You're not required to continue. You can do a little like, sort of like a dog shaking off the water. Just shake it off. And if you're having a hard time, this is what our practice is for. And this is why we have community. So that there are people who will understand. people who will support you in making choices that are wholesome, that create ease in the body, softness in the body, vulnerability in the body. Because in order to connect, you have to not be like locked up in a, in a steel drum. That's where the darkness is. That's, as the Buddha says, a deeper darkness than the intercosmic void. It's hard work. It's a lot to ask. The reward is clearly worth the work. You can feel it in your own bodies, in your own hearts, in your own minds, from all the practice you have already done. You can feel the increased clarity you have compared to before you practiced. You can feel the change in the way that you relate to the people, to the world, to your own life. That over the years you have more and more moments with some clarity. Moments where you notice something that is a choice point, where you could go in a direction that, habitually that's what you do. And you recognize, I could do that, but that's just going to make me feel terrible or make someone else feel terrible. Why would I want to do that anymore? And you have moments when you actually do something different. When your mindfulness, when the wisdom that you have accumulated, when the development and the practice is actually a structure of support for you to choose differently. To choose not to say certain things, or to say certain things. Choose not to do certain things, or perhaps choose to do certain things. Even choose not to think certain things, or to think certain things. You can choose this. They're just fabrications. Sticky, gummy, they're like, if you ever seen like a picture of like a blow up of a microscopic piece of pollen or something like that. And you see that they have like a gazillion little hooks all around the outside because they need to be able to land on things and cling. And it's those hooks that are so irritating and cause us to sneeze when we breathe them in. So many of our stories, our thoughts, and our habits are like that. They have a zillion little hooks. They've found a place to land. Imagine some habit that you've experienced your whole life. Prior to your life, it was somewhere else, maybe drifting through the intercosmic void. And it finally found you, and it was a habit you needed for some reason in childhood. And so you welcome the binding. You welcome the hook. Then life flows, life goes on, you age, you grow, you mature. Circumstances are different, conditions are different. And there's your old friend asking you to make choices. Fabricating. Habits fabricate. Habits look at the current conditions that are being experienced and fabricate an explanation, a story, an analysis. When the content of the current conditions and the content of the story that is created is fabricated as a result of current conditions, when the content seems to be reality, you're in darkness. This is what the Buddha is saying. Not knowing that the content is a fabrication. Not knowing that the way that you're perceiving the current situation is a fabrication. This is the basis of the Harvey story. The Harvey story is simply a story of dependent on the mind state and the way your body and your heart is when you encounter anything with your senses. That will determine the story that arises. If you're in a terrible mood and the last thing you want to do is spend time with Harvey, the appearance of Harvey is very unpleasant. And stories percolate from that. There's a whole outflow as a result, not of Harvey, but of the mind state that is being brought to that moment. And it's opposite. You know, if you're in the mood for company, if, you know, you're feeling buoyant and light and ready to hear stories from another person, and you see Harvey, there's a whole different outflow. One of, oh, cool, come on, Harvey, let's go to the cafe and have some sit and tell me stories. It's not about Harvey in either case. And it's not about you, because you're both of those people. It's about the way that mind states and body patterns and habits interact with current circumstances. And that interaction produces fabrications, stories, explanations, analysis, and understandings that they're all fabricated. They're created. I don't mean that, again, as a negative thing. I think it's incredible that we get to do that. You know, I think as we're fabricating, we should be dancing. You know, would you look at this? Can you believe the outflow of stories from this moment? And it's just incredible. You know, this is what creates, you know, books and plays and music and choreography and it even what creates the world. Knowing this, the Buddha says, brings light to the darkness. Knowing that, knowing the nature of fabrications, what they are, how they arise, how delightful they are, and how not a basis for making decisions they are. The basis for making decisions is kindness. The basis for making decisions is not doing any harm. This is the basis for your decision making. And if you want to take it even further, knowing, being aware of, being mindful of, being conscious of the arising of, oh, I like this, or, ugh, I hate this. noticing that, noticing how the arising of, ooh, I like this, creates a sense of wanting to bring something close. And, ugh, I hate this, creates a sense of wanting to push away, to make distance. Again, that's really a blessing to have this process. You know, you don't want to not care when you walk into, the woods and it's all sticker bushes and you're getting like cut and you want to know that, right, this is something I'm not going to do. This is wise, you know. And when you're very, very thirsty and there's nice, clean, clear water and you drink it, you want to know this is a good thing. But you need to know. You need to be mindful. Because not every time something is wanted sometimes what is wanted will cause harm if you act on it. And sometimes what is not wanted is actually wholesome and needs to be done anyway. House cleaning, laundry, the dishes, whatever is your like, oh God, I can't believe I have to do this again. But you do have to do it. If you don't do it, it causes harm. It breeds unhealthy conditions. Wisdom is knowing fabrications, knowing preferences, wanting and not wanting, liking and not liking, and the fabrications that arise from the preferences, the fabrications that create the preferences. Both happen. Knowing this process, seeing it as it actually is occurring, and choosing to be kind to yourself, to be kind to all life, to cause no harm to yourself, and to cause no harm to all life, over and over and over again, making this choice. And when you choose poorly, to smile and delight that you knew you chose poorly. It's only choosing poorly and having no idea that you did that is darkness. Choosing poorly and knowing, oops, that was not the best choice I could have made. That should raise a field of delight in your heart and mind and body. Look, my practice is working. My developing awareness is working. I can see when something wasn't a good choice. You're never going to make all good choices. The goal is mindfulness. And the goal is an absolute dedication to kindness and non-harm. So sit with your friends. Don't go back to sleep. Let's sit and practice knowing. Practice knowing the stories that come up, the sensations that arise, the emotions that flow through. Know them. Know them as fabrications. You don't have to make meaning of that. Just rest in the knowing. Rest in clearly seeing how each experience is created moment after moment out of the conditions that exist. This is the task of your practice. This is what brings light to the darkness. So let's sit.